We were a military family growing up, so we kind of moved to many different places and went to many different churches. And I found as I grew up, there was felt a calling, just kind of a continual, persistent calling that I needed to get back into church. So I went to Germany when I went into the army, and kind of the same calling. Not something that was. It was kind of something like almost a voice that you hear that, hey, you need to go to church, and so there found a church, and again it was a military church, so kind of different from most people's type of churches. So no denomination, just depending on what the chaplain was at that time, where you were. So leaving Germany, I came back home and was living in an apartment complex, working after I got out of the military, and knew a guy that was another military guy. And for whatever reason, one day we were sitting outside talking, and and his wife goes to church, and so we're talking, and we've known each other for a little while. And I said, hey, I just got to go back to church. He's, oh man, you don't want to do that. It's like, nah, I got to go because I keep getting this pull. I have to go to church. And I said to him, do you mind if I go up there and I talk to your wife and ask her? Or I asked him what church they go to. And he says, I don't go to church. He says, well, my wife goes to church and you can go up there and talk to her. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. And so when I went upstairs and I went into the house and we sat on a couch, just a normal, regular couch. And I asked her about church, and this was a totally different than what I had seen before. As we started speaking, and I told her, I just need to go to a church, and wherever church you guys go to, I'll go to just because I've got to go to church because I have to. I have this feeling, and she started speaking to me, and it was different. It was as different as night and day. As she started speaking, it seemed as though I was kind of pinned to a couch and I couldn't move. And she actually began speaking, and her eyes just seemed to change. It was almost like being mesmerized with a person. And as she spoke, the more she spoke, it was more convicting to me. And I really wanted to get up and run. I really wanted to leave. I did not want to stay there because there was this something that I was not aware of, and I wasn't sure what it was. But I couldn't get up. I could not leave. And so as she continued to talk and we went through that process, and it seemed like to me an eternity, but it may have been only a few minutes. But I believe that was then what I was to know was the Holy Ghost speaking through her to me. And so for me, it was something different. And it was a storefront church that they had in D.C. And there was probably 20 people or 10 people. And it was my first Pentecostal experience. So that was probably in 1977, I would say. And so as I went to this church and started listening to the preacher, he was a different preacher than any other preachers that I had seen. And they talked about the Holy Ghost and things that I had read a Bible, but really didn't understand all of that process. My parents, my dad was Episcopalian, my mom was Baptist, and so I didn't really have any of the understanding, but there seemed to be this draw that I needed to have this understanding so I could actually fully understand what this was all about. And so as time went on, as I started learning and understanding, and it just seemed to be a different kind of people. And so as that process, we talked about baptism and Holy Ghost and all of that. And I remember the first person that I ever saw receive the Holy Ghost. We were praying and tearing was our verbiage. And when we were all sitting there together, and we were praying for the Holy Ghost, and all of a sudden this guy jumped 10 feet in the air and came down and just hit the ground, bounced on the ground, and wasn't in any pain or wasn't in anything, and just speaking in tongues. And I was like, whoa, this is deep. This is deeper. So to me, it was one of those things that I had never seen, didn't understand. Still did not totally understand, but I knew that this was kind of where I was supposed to be at this time in my life. I think one of the hardest things that I learned um, through this was that there had to be humility. And I, through the years have tried to figure out what humility was, the things that you're going to have to turn your back on that was part of the world, and things that I didn't understand. I had to trust my pastor to believe that what he was telling me was correct. I think I carry the humility. I carry the humility part. Today, I believe that in this venture of my life, it was to give totally my life to God, whatever that meant. I've learned since I've been at Heaven View. I've learned things that I wasn't totally sure of. I thought I understood. I learned from a pastor that I said to him, I think I'm pretty humbled. And he asked, his question back to me was, are you as humble as Jesus was when he was on the cross? And he said, forgive them. And I kind of walked away with that same shame that I walked away with in 1977, because I knew that I was not there, but it's something that planted in my soul, was that as much humility as I think I have, I'm never going to be to where I need to be. And so I continue to strive for that. The other thing I learned, I think, is faith. I think that what I have learned in this journey of my life is that I look back at all the Bible characters about faith, Abraham being one of the ones that probably was the greatest. And I keep speaking to God. It was just give me faith so that I can continue to believe, and help me with my unbelief. And in that aspect, what I found was at a red light, at a red light on Clemensville Road and Salisbury Road. I was on the way to visit, to have a meeting with Pastor Linder. And what I found was that that light, and I don't know how long it takes to change from red to green, but from red to green, God took me through a faith process that, even with the faith that we believe, along with the humility, that only if you allow God to lead you can you really have the faith, that it isn't anything that we can do. And that even with Abraham, I believe that up until, with all the faith that he had, up until the point where God sent him up on the mountain with his son Isaac, I don't believe that before that time that he would have had that faith. And so I think with what I was told in that red light was that you just have to have faith, and that if you keep believing and you keep trusting God, he'll keep giving you more faith. And that's kind of where I am